So you want to know about 2016, do you? Alright. It all started with this freaking gorilla.
Well, this is something I've never gotten a chance to do before. A top list of the best games that were released this year. I never thought that would ever happen. The rules for this are that only games that I reviewed qualify. But before we get into my top 5 picks of 2016, I have a few other things to discuss. First, I want to talk about The Division, being my most disappointing game of 2016. I had planned on reviewing it, but I chose not to, as I didn't even get that far until becoming extremely disinterested. It's a third-person cover-based shooter that's also an MMORPG. The first part works really well. It was very Gears of War-like, and I like Gears of War. But the MMORPG elements suck. First off, in a game where you shoot at other people, if you land a headshot, that's it. You're dead. You don't get to keep fighting like nothing happened. I hated unloading all of my ammo into a boss's face only to have them keep going. It's very much a numbers game like any other MMORPG. Loot increases your stats, but I don't think that third-person cover-based shooters should have MMORPG elements in them because it breaks the immersion. For me anyway. I don't think that The Division is bad, but let's just say that I was disappointed with it and glad that I got it free from Nvidia. Then there's No Man's Sky, being my top pick for worst game of the year. First off, for the people that are blaming everyone being mad or disappointed and talking about how they fell into the hype, fuck you. Because what Sean Murray showed off is completely different than what was in the game. What he said you could do isn't in the game, and the 4 months of radio silence is unacceptable. Sean Murray and Hello Games showed content not in the game and were and still are falsely advertising it. Even Sony threw them under the bus. Secondly, what that game has to offer is boring. Exploration is boring. Gathering resources is boring. Managing resources sucks. Combat was obviously an afterthought, as it sucks. Space combat sucks, as you'll always lose because enemy ships are faster than your slow-as-molasses ship. There's 2 goals: do the Atlas path or get to the center of the galaxy, and both have conclusions that slap you in the face with Sean Murray's dick, which, like this game, is pathetic and unsatisfying. I heard that the recent update brings a couple of much-needed features. I haven't played around with it yet at time of writing, and I'm not sure if I will because this is a case of too little, too late. Then we have the most controversial game of the year, Mighty No. 9. I thought that Mighty No. 9 was a good game. I enjoyed it and didn't find any issues with it. I understand that the game had many delays and other problems during development, and if you were a Kickstarter backer, I really can't say anything to comfort you on it, because you know that games get delayed. Although I do understand that when a game was ready to launch but had online connectivity issues for co-op, it got delayed because of it, and from what I've seen still has those issues, and that would be frustrating. But I thought that it was pretty close to what a Mega Man game should feel like. You run, jump, and you shoot things. I didn't mind the dash mechanics. After all, Mega Man X is my favorite Mega Man series, and I heard that the Wii U version is buggy as hell, but I don't know if it is because I bought the PC version.
And now on to honorable mentions for best game of the year. Due to technicalities or just not reviewing them, that's why they couldn't make it officially onto this list.
We'll start the honorable mentions with Rise of the Tomb Raider, which would have made the list if only the Xbox One version didn't launch November of 2015. While I reviewed the PC version that was released in January of this year, because of that technicality, I cannot include it on the list. Now that the PlayStation 4 version is out, if that's what you were waiting for, hopefully you finally got to play it. If I were to put it on the list though, I would rank it rather low due to the game's less than stellar final boss fight and sequel bait conclusion, resulting in what can be seen as a bittersweet end to the journey. Also, honorable mention number 2, Pokemon Moon would have been on this list if I had reviewed it. But since Nintendo likes to troll around YouTube making content ID claims on any and every review, let's play, or just general coverage of their games, I don't review anything that's Nintendo's intellectual property anymore, at least until they stop that bullshit. Pokemon Sun and Moon bring a breath of fresh air into the series by doing away with the gyms and instead going with island trials, which are sorta like puzzles but still have Pokemon battles. You also fight captains, which are like sub-bosses until you reach the kahuna of each of the 4 islands, who are the major bosses. The game is also heavily story-driven, to the point where they could have done away with the trials, but they needed something to keep the core Pokemon series intact. It also introduced 2 new Pokemon that have knocked off 2 Pokemon from my top 10 Pokemon list. So long Chandelure and Hydreigon, hello Primarina and Lunala. Come to think of it, that list needs updating, but don't worry Absol, you're still my number 1.
And now we get into the list proper with what could be the very definition of time sink, Stardew Valley.
Yeah, the most recent review is number 5 on the list. I honestly wasn't expecting to like this game as much as I did. The crafting was easy and didn't require guesswork, but what was really fun was that everything you did felt rewarding regardless of what you actually did. Very rarely did I feel punished for making the wrong choices, which there were only 2 instances, when you ran out of energy or ran out of health in the mines. Even screwing up with NPCs by giving them the wrong gifts wasn't a deterrent, as it just makes you even more persistent. Managing your time, money, energy, resources, and interacting with the community was a lot of micromanagement, but it never got boring like other simulator games of its nature. I think it's because the game has a lot of charm that keeps you going, and with its open-ended nature that allows you to do whatever you please, you shouldn't find yourself getting bored. And even if you do, go and explore and you're bound to find something.
So are you ready to see some toys come to life? No? Well, screw you anyway, because we're heading off to Skylands with Skylanders Imaginators.
Who didn't see this one coming? I love the Skylanders series, everyone knows that. However, while this one wasn't the best in terms of gameplay, it did bring the best feature that the series has been longing for, the ability to create your own Skylanders. This level of immersion allows you to really inject yourself into the game, and the fact that the classic Skylanders show up to help the new Imaginators is a really good way of telling the story. I rank this game rather low because it brings back the older methods of the game being a money sink where you needed to buy a ton of figures to unlock everything, and certain classes have dumb restrictions like swashbucklers not having legs or ninjas not having a torso. The plot is very much a Saturday morning cartoon like all of them, but the game is unfortunately showing its age, especially with how superchargers really changed things up that going back to the older formula made this one feel dated. But it was still a really fun experience playing with the creation tool and making all the Skylanders that I was able to make. And at time of writing, I have 93% of all the trophies and about 80% of game completion and 95% of every creation item unlocked. Yeah, I play this game a lot and I'm still playing it and buying figures for it.
Make sure you got your Rhino locked and loaded, because we're about to rip some Blargians a new one with the remake of Ratchet Clank.
The Ratchet & Clank characters to me are the mascots of the PlayStation. Sure, there was Crash, but the PlayStation 1 had many mascots. But Crash didn't really belong to Sony. Neither did Spyro, Lara Croft, or even Croc. But Ratchet & Clank have had the most exclusive games on the PlayStation series of consoles since the PS2. More than the Jack and Sly series combined. When I heard about the movie, I was interested in seeing it. Then I heard about the game being released to coincide with it. I posted the review the day after the movie launched, so I couldn't give my thoughts on it until now. The movie is probably the most faithful adaptation of a video game you'll ever see. So much so that the game has actual scenes from the movie in it, and I enjoyed watching it. The game itself is also really fun. It plays like a Ratchet & Clank game, and it's really nice to revisit the first levels from the first game with this generation's technology. And it cuts out a lot of the useless areas that the first game had. The story is different, which is good, as Ratchet was extremely unlikable in the first game, because he was selfish and antagonistic. In this game, he's very much like his counterparts from the Future series on the PlayStation 3. It shows him as kind-hearted and willing to put himself at risk to do the right thing. However, he's a little immature, but that's only out of his excitement of being a Galactic Ranger. I would like to see more Ratchet & Clank games spawn from this one and take this continuity further.
As we descend down this list, we find ourselves in the second ring of hell with the brand new Doom.
I didn't pay much attention to this game when it was in development. I've heard about it, but I heard more about Anita Sarkeesian complaining about the violence. I got it shortly after release, and it was Jim Sterling that really sold me on it, after watching his Jimpression video on it. Watching that fast-paced and gory as hell gameplay, I just had to have this game. I was really glad that I did pick it up. I love the visuals, love seeing all the monsters from hell being redesigned for 2016. The music was awesome, Every single fight felt epic with a giant arsenal of weapons, no reloading, and moving very fast. I give id Software a lot of credit with this game. They did a really amazing job at modernizing Doom for a new age. While your overall goal is just to kill some goddamn demons, there's a really good story if you stop to pay attention to it. While it's not a stop and smell the roses type of game, you do get a lot out of it if you do. While the original story from the 1993 game was pretty self-aware with how off the wall it was, this one has a more serious tone, and I would like to see a movie based off this story, not the one that came out with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Like Rise of the Tomb Raider, the ending is bittersweet so that can set up a sequel.
And finally, we've come to the end. My game of the year, and it should come as absolutely no surprise to anyone since you've seen more gameplay of it on this channel than anything else, Overwatch.
To be honest, I was going to put Overwatch at the number 2 spot due to it being a $60 game with microtransactions, how they handled the summer games and Halloween loot boxes, and Doom would have taken the number 1 spot. But I don't play Doom anywhere near the amount of time I do as Overwatch. I can understand the microtransactions in Overwatch as they use to fund extra development stuff like characters, maps, and extra modes, so while it is a bitter pill to swallow, I'll go with it. Overwatch is just fun. The characters are great to play, and it's a very easy to pick up and play type of game, which is how games should be. The effort on teamwork and the general craziness that can happen in fights can lead to awesome moments of glory, facepalming fails, or hilariously glorious fails, like a Reinhardt tackling another Reinhardt off a cliff to their deaths. Each character is fun to play with their own personality, from the spunky Tracer to the emotionless Widowmaker, Trolly Sombra, mayhem-loving Junkrat, the ever-positive Mei, battle-hardened Soldier 76, and many more. There is so much to love about the characters, and their stories are all interesting. It's also the first multiplayer game that I got really into. I was really shocked at how much fun I was having and how much I was enjoying myself. This was a $60 gamble that not only paid off, but it was something that I was really surprised that I got into and love playing every chance that I get, and I still haven't gotten tired of it, and I don't think I ever will.
And those are my top 5 picks for Game of the Year of 2016. And if you didn't see your game on the list, I didn't review it, and those are the rules. But maybe next year, for 2017, I'll have a top 10 list of games.